Welcome to Uncle Bert's radio broadcast. This radio show was broadcast by the United States Department of Agriculture in 1926. Disclaimer: this is read from a historic archive document. Do not assume contents reflects current scientific knowledge, policies, or practices. This broadcast was aired on 7th of April 1926.
Dear boys and girls of Radio Garden Club, this is Uncle Bert, the garden expert of the United States Department of Agriculture, broadcasting the sixth of a series of garden talks to boys and girls. Last week, we discussed the growing of flowers in the garden, but left the subject of roses for a special broadcast. Now we're going to take up briefly some of the important questions regarding roses, especially roses for cut flowers. The florists will tell you that they usually have difficulty getting good roses in the summertime, when those grown in greenhouses are going through a rest period. In any event, there is always good sale for handsome roses for bouquets and table decorations throughout the summer, and many persons are earning tidy sums of money from the sale of roses grown in their side and backyards. Growing roses for cut flowers is a splendid opportunity for the boys and girls of the Radio Garden Club wherever they have suitable conditions. What are suitable conditions for growing roses, do you say? Well, there are several points that must be considered. First, roses require plenty of sunshine and moisture. There is no use trying to grow roses on ground that is shaded either by buildings or trees. Trees not only shade the rose plants, but also rob them of moisture and plant food. Roses must have sunshine, and this can only be secured where there are no obstructions to shade the rose garden. Moisture can be supplied where water under pressure is available, but even the water must be applied carefully. Second, roses must have a rich, well-drained soil. They are hungry plants if they are healthy, and their food consists of rich compost and fertilizers in the soil. But like other plants, do not take their food in lumps and chunks, but in liquid form, so must have moisture at their roots. Too much moisture is worse than not enough, for roses are very sensitive to cold, wet feet. What kind of soil is best for roses? Some of the finest rose gardens in the southern states are on light sandy loam soil, but usually with a clay subsoil. Fine rose gardens are to be found in the northeastern states on a rather heavy clay loam. Roses do well on almost any good soil, provided it is well supplied with compost and such fertilizers as bone meal. About the only soils on which roses do not thrive are pure sand or a very gravelly soil, or on heavy, wet clay soils. Sandy or gravelly soils can be greatly improved for roses by adding a few shovelfuls of clay to each spot where the rose plants are to be set, and mixing the clay with the original soil to a depth of 15 to 24 inches. Plenty of compost and a little bone meal can be mixed with the soil at the same time. Compost from a dairy barn is best, and can be used in the proportion of 1 part to 5 or 6 parts of soil in the holes where the rose plants are to be set. About a half pint of coarsely ground bone meal can be mixed with the soil at the same time. What kinds of roses should be planted in the club garden? The ever-blooming or monthly roses are about the only ones for a continuous supply of bloom. The old-fashioned June or annual roses are beautiful and produce one big crop of blossoms each year, but they bloom at a time when everybody has roses and there is little sale for them. They are fine for planting about the house and in the garden, but not so good for the club garden as the perpetual bloomers. Now, before I name the favorite dozen bush roses recommended by the American Rose Society, I will pause just a second until you get pencil and paper. Here they are. Radiance, Frau Karl Druschki, that's D-R-U-S-C-H-K-I, pronounced Druschki. Ophelia, Rusenteplitz, Red Radiance, Los Angeles. Mrs. Aaron Ward, Columbia. Duchess of Wellington. Madame Caroline Testu, that's T-S-T-O-U-T, pronounced Testo. Madame Edward Herria, that's H-E-R-R-I-O-T, pronounced Herrio. Kissarin August Victoria, that's V-I-K-T-O-R-I-A, pronounced Victoria. Not all of these are adapted to any one locality. In fact, the favorite dozen does not include many of the most desirable varieties, for some parts of the country. For example, the favorite dozen does not include Killarney Sunburst, General Jacqueminot, that's Jacqueminot, pronounced Jackminot. Paul Néron, Madame Super, Golden Emblem, or Who's Your Beauty, in the view of the fact that a number of varieties are local in their adaptation, the boys and girls of the Radio Garden Club should consult some florist or nurseryman with regard to the selection of the varieties best suited for growing in their locality. It is often possible not only to get this advice from a local nurseryman, but to secure the plants from him. If your library has a copy of the American Rose Annual, published by the American Rose Society in 1924, you will find on page 146 a complete list of the varieties of roses that are adapted to the 7 principal regions of the United States. For our modern audience, you can find a copy of this publication in the description below. When should roses be planted for growing cut flowers? Just as early in the spring as the ground can be forked and danger of hard frosts is past. Now is the time in the north-central part of the country, say in the latitude of Washington, D.C., and a little later further north. Rose plants that have been held in storage over the winter can be planted quite early, but those from greenhouses should not be planted out until the weather is fairly warm. Fall planting is recommended for the more hardy varieties. How should roses be planted? First, the holes should be dug and a liberal amount of compost worked into the soil, also a little bone meal. Some of the most successful rose growers trench their soil, that is, they remove the surface soil and work compost into the subsoil to a depth of 24 to 36 inches. The rose plants are set an inch or so deeper than they grew in the nursery, and fine soil packed closely among their roots, with no chance for air spaces. The roots should all be spread out in a natural manner, with any that are broken or bruised neatly trimmed. Roses grown in pots in the greenhouse should be set with the hull of earth around their roots, but if the ball is hard, it should be soaked with water and broken or crushed just a trifle. After setting the rose plants, they should be pruned back 1/2 or 2/3 so as to produce a new growth. Always use a sharp knife or pruning shears for pruning the plants in order to make clean, smooth cuts. How often should roses be watered? Usually about once a week during dry weather. Frequent sprinkling is not advisable, and it is best to give the plants a good soaking, then wait until the soil shows signs of dryness before applying any more water. The soil should be hoed or raked over lightly between waterings. How often should roses be pruned? The plants should be given a severe pruning before growth starts in the spring, and light pruning at intervals during the summer. Usually the cutting of blossoms will keep the plants sufficiently pruned, except for a little thinning. How should roses be protected for the winter? After frost and the leaves have fallen, the wood goes through a ripening process, which prepares the plants to withstand the cold, but they need protection. A good method is to set 3 stakes about each plant, bringing them together at the top and fastening them with string or wire. Where bundles of rye straw can be secured, thin sheets or handful S of the straw be placed standing around the plants and supported by the stakes, then tied with strings at the top and about the middle so as to completely enclose the plants. A little earth is then banked about the base of the straw. Branches of pine, cedar, or any evergreen may be planted around the rose bushes and tied so as to form a protecting enclosure. Old carpet, rugs, or matting all make suitable protectors. As a rule, The covering should be thickest on the northwest side to protect the plants from the cold. In sections where the winters are very severe, it is necessary to bend down the rose bushes and cover them with soil or leaves for protection. These are a few of the points on growing roses, but the department and the state colleges will be glad to furnish you with printed bulletins that tell more about rose growing for pleasure and profit. Boys and girls interested in gardening by radio should apply at once for membership cards. Copies of previous talks given by Uncle Bert and other printed information on gardening will be sent to all regularly enrolled gardeners. There is no charge for this material. Until next time, kids, remember to giddy up and garden.
This production was researched and produced by BreakAway Empire LLC.